insane snowstorm I've experienced.
It was originally put in as a kind of control where nothing happens. Nothing really should be happening.
Everyone thinks Greenland is empty because it's freezing.
So like houses and roads and everywhere is just filled up with snow.
But that's not the real reason. Other places are just as cold and still packed with people. So why does a land bigger than most countries have fewer than 60,000 residents?
We have some huge cracks in the coast because the permafrost is melting very fast.
The answer isn't temperature, but a landscape that refuses to cooperate. Greenland's empty edge. If you have been active on social media or follow international news, you have definitely come across a country with a strong interest from the United States.
I think Greenland's going to want us, but we get along very well with Europe. We'll see how it all works out. We're negotiating right now for Greenland.
This country wasn't usually in the conversation at all, even a few years prior. And looking it up, you may have realized it's indeed one of the largest countries in the world, yet not many live there. Today, we explore why that is. Icebergs in Greenland can rise as high as city apartment buildings, and that's only what you see above the water. Nearly 90% of each iceberg hides below the surface, drifting silently through freezing seas. These floating mountains are more than obstacles for ships. They are a preview of Greenland's bigger problem. Everything here is larger, colder, and harder to live with than it first appears. Greenland is massive, more than 836,000 square miles. But almost all of that space is covered by ice. The ice-free land is roughly the size of Sweden, yet it lacks the roads, farms, and infrastructure that make Sweden livable. People cling to a thin strip of coastline, and even that narrow edge is harsh. The southeast is especially unforgiving, so harsh that even wildlife avoids it. Musk oxen survive in the north, caribou roam parts of the west. But in the southeast, almost nothing. No foxes or hares, only ice, steep cliffs, and relentless storms. This is also where early European explorers first arrived. They saw frozen emptiness and turned away. The few coastal communities that survive today rely almost entirely on fishing and whaling. There are no giant cities, no sprawling industries. Greenland's economy depends on the ocean for better or worse. In March 2022, a single megastorm dumped 11 billion metric tons of snow across the southeast. That amount was enough to temporarily slow the island's overall ice loss. It's a reminder of how extreme this place can be. Greenland isn't empty simply because it's cold. It's empty because geography and isolation stack the odds against you. And if the southeast looks like this, the rest of the island holds even bigger challenges. Now, it's time for something interesting. In a now-deleted social media post, 3 soldiers stood on a frozen shore, surrounded by thousands of eerie, motionless creatures. The ocean had turned into a frozen battlefield, leaving them to wonder, was this a mysterious natural disaster, or something far darker lurking beneath the ice? How much of the event was true was unclear, but facing it was undeniably terrifying. Now, back to the topic at hand. Katabatic killers. If the southeast already sounds harsh, the winds make it worse. This region doesn't just experience snowstorms. Somehow it feels like it gets targeted. Ocean currents funnel storm systems straight into this corner of the island. Wind, snow, and freezing rain arrive with precision. But the real threat comes from above. Cold air builds up over Greenland's massive ice sheet, and cold air is heavy. When gravity pulls it downward, it rushes off cliffs and glaciers at extreme speed. Scientists call these blasts katabatic winds. Locals call them pitarak, that which attacks you. These winds are not gentle gusts. They are violent. Speeds can reach 160 miles per hour. That's as strong as a Category 5 hurricane. In 1970, one pitarak tore through Tasiilaq and destroyed nearly half the town. Homes were ripped apart. Boats were destroyed. Entire neighborhoods were flattened. And this isn't rare. Even outside the worst storms, strong winds roar through the region more than 15 times a year, often exceeding 40 miles per hour. That's enough to toss equipment, damage buildings, and make simple travel dangerous. Animals seem to understand the risk. Most avoid the southeast coast entirely. For humans, living here means constant awareness. Secure everything. Watch the sky. Prepare for impact. This isn't just cold weather. It's geography working against you. Steep terrain, open ocean, and a towering ice sheet combine to create one of the most violent wind systems on Earth. and wind is only one piece of why Greenland remains so incredibly empty. Greenland's temporal madness. Greenland's weather shifts dramatically and without warning, and it isn't a joke. Fog can roll in within hours. Hurricane-force winds can ground flights for days. Icy storms can shut down Nuuk, the capital, almost overnight. Boats offer little relief in winter, when frozen coasts and heavy seas block travel. Living here isn't about convenience, it's about endurance. And yet, people have tried to make this island home for thousands of years. 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, the first Paleo-Inuit groups arrived. The Sakak culture lived here around 2,500 BC, but disappeared by 800 BC. Over time, at least 6 distinct Inuit cultures appeared and faded. Each group adapted to extreme conditions. Each tested the limits of survival. Then came the Norse. Eric the Red arrived during a rare window known as the medieval warm period. For a short time, southern Greenland experienced milder conditions. Extra sunlight and lower volcanic activity made parts of the land appear almost welcoming. The name Greenland was likely more marketing than reality. Settlers came, expecting opportunity. Instead, they found isolation and hardship. When the warm period ended, colder conditions returned. Crops failed, trade weakened. By the years 1400 to 1500 AD, the Norse settlements had vanished. Greenland's climate does not compromise. When conditions shift, survival shifts with them. The island's emptiness is not simply about low temperatures. It is about unpredictability. Weather that can turn within hours. Seasons that can reverse progress overnight. For centuries, only those deeply adapted to this rhythm have endured. And that pattern continues today. Ocean of danger. Before you even reach Greenland, the ocean tests you. The seas around the island are freezing year-round. Water temperatures hover between 30 and 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Fall in, and hypothermia begins almost immediately. In less than 10 minutes, a person can lose consciousness. Staying afloat is hard enough. Doing it while waves rise over 12 feet high makes survival even less likely. Then there are the icebergs. In the Grand Banks, average icebergs weigh between 100,000 and 200,000 tons. Many stand as tall as a 15-story building, and those are the smaller ones. The largest can exceed 10 million tons, drifting slowly like moving mountains. These frozen giants don't just float harmlessly. They block shipping routes. They damage boats. In recent years, one massive iceberg drifted so close to a Greenlandic town that residents feared it could break apart and send dangerous waves toward shore. It became an unwanted neighbor, sitting just offshore. Storms make everything worse. High winds, rough seas, and floating ice combine into one of the most difficult maritime environments on Earth. Even modern ships must move carefully. Fishing vessels and supply boats operate in conditions that can change within hours. Survival or die trying. Greenland never offered easy wealth. The Vikings thought they found one valuable resource: walrus ivory. For a time, it worked. Europe wanted ivory for carving and trade, and Greenland supplied it. But markets change. When Europe shifted to elephant ivory, Greenland's main export collapsed almost overnight. The Norse settlements were suddenly isolated and economically stranded. They also lacked something far more important than trade: deep survival knowledge. The Inuit had spent centuries learning how to live in this environment. The Vikings had not. In other parts of the North Atlantic, the Gulf Stream helped keep waters open year-round. Greenland offered no such advantage. The sea froze solid. Ice stretched across the horizon for months at a time. The Inuit adapted in ways the Norse never fully understood. They developed the kayak, light and narrow, built for slicing through ice-choked waters to hunt seals. When winter sealed off land routes, they did not retreat. They adjusted. Hunting was precise and patient. Dogs located seal-breathing holes in the ice. Hunters would place a single strand of hair over the hole. When it moved, they knew a seal was rising. If sight failed, they pressed their ears to the ice and listened, sometimes for hours. Patience mattered as much as strength. When the seal surfaced, a toggling harpoon struck. The detachable head stayed lodged inside the animal while the shaft came free, allowing the hunter to hold tension as the seal struggled below. The ice became a battleground. This system had been refined for more than 1,000 years. One mistake meant losing food, or your life. The Vikings were still trying to farm and survive winters they barely understood. Greenland does not reward trial and error. It rewards mastery. The Inuit endured because they adapted. Others disappeared. Greenland's treeless desert. According to World Bank data, only about 0.00054% of the island is forested. In practical terms, that means a single small valley in the south called Chingwa It is so small that many reports simply round the forest cover down to zero. And the reason is not simply cold temperatures. Much of Greenland's surface is exposed bedrock. Glaciers scraped away most of the soil long ago, leaving rock that is billions of years old. Where soil does exist, it is thin, coarse, and difficult to work with. Growing large trees requires deep, stable ground. Greenland rarely offers that. Isolation makes it worse. Seeds travel through wind, birds, and nearby forests. Russia has vast tree cover stretching across thousands of miles. Greenland does not. The nearest significant greenery is Iqaluit, roughly 500 miles away, and Newfoundland and Labrador, nearly 850 miles away. Seeds do not naturally travel those distances in meaningful numbers. Without trees, there is no timber industry, no easy source of firewood, no natural wooden shelter materials. But the Inuit adapted. Instead of relying on wood for heat and light, they used seal fat oil. It fueled lamps. It warmed homes. It replaced what trees could not provide. Every part of the seal mattered, not just for food, but for survival. Greenland's emptiness is not accidental. It is geological. It is ecological. It is built into the land itself. Where trees cannot grow, large populations rarely follow. West Coast survival. Greenland's west coast exists because of a strange twist of wind. Strong southeast winds slam into the massive ice sheet that covers most of the island. As that air rises and then drops down the western side, it transforms into what scientists call foehn winds. These descending winds warm up as they fall. The result? Winter temperatures on the west coast can suddenly jump by around 20 degrees Fahrenheit. That doesn't make it comfortable. It simply changes dangerously freezing into barely survivable. But in Greenland, barely survivable is enough. That slight temperature difference is why most of Greenland's population lives along the west coast. It's where settlements cling to the land while the rest of the island remains largely empty. But survival here isn't just about warmth. Greenland sits between the Arctic and the North Atlantic, isolated from major population centers. The nearest landmass is Canada, not a bustling city, but remote tundra. Iqaluit, the closest Canadian settlement of note, has around 7,400 people and sits nearly 500 miles from Nuuk. Unlike Norway or Sweden, Greenland has no neighboring highway systems, no dense European trade routes, and no easy connections. It has an ocean in every direction, and that ocean is unforgiving. Storms rise quickly. Rogue waves and heavy squalls turn crossings into serious risks. During winter, more than 10% of waves exceed 12 feet. That's taller than most people. Supply ships, fishing boats, and travelers must navigate conditions that can shift within hours. Because of this geography and isolation, people cluster where they can survive. The west coast becomes the lifeline. The rest of Greenland remains largely untouched. And even here, survival is never guaranteed. Greenland's bedrock nightmare. Glaciers once covered almost the entire island, and as they moved, they scraped away most of the soil. What remains in many areas is exposed bedrock, ancient rock formations roughly 3.8 billion years old. That might be impressive for geology. It is terrible for agriculture. In southern and western Greenland, farming often feels like trying to grow crops on stone. There is some soil in the south, but it comes with problems. It is acidic. It is coarse, and it does not absorb water well. A study of 23 cultivated sites found that 99% of the soil repelled moisture. 98% was classified as extremely hydrophobic. In simple terms, water does not soak in easily. It runs off. That makes growing food incredibly difficult. Farming requires stable, fertile soil that can hold water and nutrients. Greenland rarely offers those conditions. Even when temperatures rise enough for crops to grow, the ground itself creates another barrier. This is why agriculture has always been limited here. It's not just about climate, it's about the foundation beneath your feet. When the land itself fights against growth, large populations struggle to take root. Inuit, masters of survival. Greenland has always been home to predators. Polar bears roam the land at a ratio of roughly 1 for every 10 Greenlanders. This is not an environment where weakness lasts long. The Inuit adapted instead of retreating. They shaped muskox horn into powerful bows capable of taking down large animals, including bears. Their survival depended on skill, not brute strength. The Vikings, by comparison, arrived as farmers carrying swords. Farming in Greenland's soil and climate was never sustainable. Clothing became just as important as weapons. Inuit women stitched caribou fur garments using double rows of sinew. When the material became wet, the sinew swelled and tightened, sealing out moisture. This design helped keep warmth inside, even in extreme cold. Vikings relied on wool clothing that often stayed damp, offering limited protection in -40-degree conditions. Every tool, every technique, and every cultural habit was refined over generations. The Norse struggled to adapt. The Thule people arrived in the 1200s and adjusted more successfully. Today, Inuit descendants make up about 88% of Greenland's population. Small, scattered communities endured where larger foreign settlements collapsed. Adaptation even extended to biology. Studies show that Inuit populations carry gene variants that help produce brown fat, which generates heat within the body. That extra internal warmth matters in extreme climates. Survival here was never random. Greenland versus Iceland. Location. Winds. Greenland's ice is melting, sure, but don't hold your breath for easy mining. By the time it's convenient, the world might look very different. Other icy regions have thrived though. Take Iceland and Alaska. Both are smaller than Greenland, yet both have more people. Why? Location. Alaska sits near the top of the globe, a hub for transportation. FedEx runs a massive center in Anchorage. Planes reach almost anywhere in the northern hemisphere within 10 hours. Iceland? Right in the middle of the Atlantic, between Europe and North America, with the Gulf Stream bringing warmth and keeping the seas navigable. Only 10 to 14% of Iceland is glacier-covered compared to Greenland's 80%. That difference means Iceland's oceans aren't clogged with floating death traps. Greenland's icebergs are relentless. Even today, they smash ships and threaten villages. In just the last decade, the Mary Arctica container ship and the Tugalik trawler collided with them. Boats can't move, fishing becomes a gamble, and harbors turn dangerous. In July 2025, a drifting iceberg blocked Inarsut's harbor, bad enough for a village accessible only by plane or boat. But 2018 was worse. A 10-million-ton iceberg grounded outside town, visible from space. The entire village of 200 had to evacuate. Any tsunami-like waves would have left nowhere to run. Greenland's ice isn't just a backdrop, it's a constant, deadly obstacle. And that's before we even talk about trying to live off the land. The question becomes, how do people survive here at all? Greenland's melting challenge. Greenland never had Iceland's advantages. No fertile farmland, no ideal trade routes, mostly ice and exposed rock. Now the glaciers are retreating. The growing season is slowly expanding, sometimes 2 to 3 weeks longer than before. In the future, it could stretch close to 100 days. On paper, that sounds like an opportunity. In reality, it is complicated. Warmer temperatures have brought droughts. Pastures are drying out. Sheep farms are struggling. Greenland has only 38 sheep farmers left, and sheep provide 99% of the country's farmed meat. Without them, domestic food production shrinks to marine mammals and a few cattle. Greenland's only commercial cattle farmer, Sophus Frederiksson, said it clearly. No new jobs have been created, and agriculture is on its knees. A longer growing season means little if the soil dries out or fails to support crops. To adapt, the government has explored agrotourism. Visitors travel between farms, learn about wool production, and sometimes stay with farmers. The Wool in the North program offers a small economic boost, but it is not a full solution. Warming has also introduced a new threat: wildfires. In 2017 and 2019, fires near Sisimiut were so remote that satellites detected them before residents did. In 2019, temperatures reached 68 degrees Fahrenheit, far above Greenland's usual July average of 50 degrees. Warm air combined with dry tundra grasses created conditions for flames to spread. Longer summers may open doors to new industries, but the population continues to shrink. Birth rates are falling. People are moving away. By 2040, the working-age population is expected to drop 16%. The land may be changing. The people are disappearing. And that raises the real question: who will remain to build Greenland's future? European fails and Danish luck. Greenland laughed at European ambition. In 1500, Portuguese explorer Corte Real tried hunting for a northwest passage. He arrived to find frozen seas stretching as far as the eye could see. Defeated, he turned south to Newfoundland and went home to complain. That was effectively the world's first one-star Yelp review, enough to keep most Europeans away. Portugal had claimed Greenland in 1499 as Terra do Lavrador, but they didn't stick around. 2 centuries later, Denmark arrived like a patient opportunist. Greenland is technically still Danish, though with strong home rule, it's like living with your parents while paying your own bills. Danish missionary Hans Egede sailed north searching for Norse settlers, only to find they'd vanished 200 years earlier. Isolation defined Greenland. Denmark simply took over from Portugal without resistance. Nobody else was lining up for a frozen wasteland with almost no farmland. The Danes got lucky in the opposite way from Eric the Red. He landed during the medieval warm period, with sunshine and greenery making Greenland look almost livable. Egaday arrived during the Little Ice Age, when the ice pushed back hard. In 1776, Denmark enforced a trade monopoly that lasted until 1950. No cotton, no tobacco, no gold, just ice. Greenland wasn't a prize, it was a problem, yet Denmark held on, quietly managing a land everyone else wanted to forget. Mining gold rush. Greenland's next big play isn't tourism, it's mining. Foreign powers are suddenly very interested. Nothing rattles a small population like realizing the rock beneath their feet is suddenly priceless. The massive ice sheet is melting, losing the equivalent of 110 million Olympic-sized swimming pools every year. That exposes more minerals, year after year. This isn't just oil and gas. Greenland hides a treasure trove: graphite, lithium, and rare earths, the backbone of Teslas, wind turbines, and military tech. China controls 72% of US imports and all of Europe's, making Greenland suddenly irresistible. But getting at it isn't simple. Most minerals remain trapped under ice or solid bedrock. The workforce is tiny, infrastructure is almost non-existent, and environmental regulations are tighter than a steel trap. Mining here is messy, expensive, and slow. Even with riches underfoot, Greenland proves that natural wealth doesn't magically translate into easy money. The question now, who will dare unlock it first and at what cost? Modernization and empty cities. Greenland's treasures run deep, minerals that could power today's industries. Yet they haven't translated into a booming economy. In the 1950s, Denmark decided to modernize Greenland. Translation: move people out of centuries-old coastal villages and shove them into Nuuk. Why? To make them more Danish. The result? Traditional Inuit communities collapsed, and generational trauma took root. Greenland now has the highest suicide rate in the world. Centuries of culture don't vanish neatly just because someone draws a new city plan. Nuuk became the capital and Greenland's largest city. 40% of the population lives there, around 19,800 people in 2023. Less than the crowd at your average Taylor Swift concert. Population density? A staggering 0.36 people per square mile, or 0.14 per square kilometer. That's the lowest density anywhere on Earth. Mongolia, the runner-up, has over 15 times the density. Greenland is massive, mostly empty, and only a fraction of it is truly livable. Even today, the modern push for industry and urbanization hasn't changed that. The land resists, the culture persists, and the population remains scattered. Tourism and transport nightmare. Greenland wants tourists, but getting here has always been a nightmare. Until November 2024, no international flights could land in Nuuk. Then, a new runway and terminal finally opened the doors. Step 1 in inviting the outside world. 2 more airports are planned for 2026, including an international hub in Ilulissat. In 2024, Greenland welcomed 141,000 visitors, mostly cruise-goers. That's nearly 3 times the population of the island. Tourism now makes up 4.9% of the GDP and employs 6.2% of locals. Airports aren't just for visitors, they're survival tools. Roads? Forget it. Greenland's longest road is 22 miles, built by Volkswagen as a cold-weather test track. Not to help anyone get groceries. Cars barely matter. Boats outnumber them in Nuuk, but only 5.3% of Greenlanders even own one. Roads end abruptly at town limits, and tarmac surrenders to ice outside settlements. Summer travel options are planes, boats, or helicopters. Winter? Boats are useless against floating ice traps. Snowmobiles and dog sleds take over. Trains don't exist. Tourism might be growing, but reaching this frozen island remains a brutal challenge. Internet is a luxury. Greenland's isolation isn't just about ice and empty towns. It reaches into your Wi-Fi signal. The entire island runs on 2 internet cables, one to Iceland and one to Canada. Up north, satellite is the only option. The result? Internet bills between $115 and $158 a month, almost double the US average. And even then, streaming still buffers. In Greenland, being online feels like surviving the elements. Expensive, slow, and always a gamble. Greenland's broken economy. Greenland isn't just icy and empty, it's economically hostile. Farming barely exists, timber is non-existent, and other industries, forget about it. There simply isn't enough of an economy to sustain a population. The top industry is fishing, and nothing else comes close. Fish and fish products made up 87% of Greenland's exports in 2019. Seal and whale hunting is tightly controlled, protected animals must be eaten locally, and quotas limit the catch. That means nearly all other food is imported. The cost of living skyrockets. Life here is 44% more expensive than in the US. A family of 4 can easily spend over $6,000 a month, excluding rent, and milk runs $10 a gallon. Infrastructure doesn't help. Supplies arrive by ships from North America and Europe. Navigating stormy seas to reach a handful of ports, Greenland isn't just remote, it's a logistical nightmare. 17.4% of households live in poverty. Survival here has always been a test of endurance. In a few industries, heavy reliance on imports, brutal weather, it's no wonder outsiders struggle. Centuries of tough living made the Inuit masters of survival, while the Vikings fled when life got too real. The harsh reality of Greenland's climate. Greenland hugs the northernmost edge of Canada, a place almost no one calls home. 2/3 of the island sits above the Arctic Circle, deep in the polar zone. Winters here aren't just cold. They can plummet to -58 degrees Fahrenheit, while the average between January and March hovers around 10 degrees. Summers in Nuuk barely flirt with 46 degrees. The annual average temperature in the capital, 31 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the kind of climate that would shut down half of Los Angeles. Even the rain won't help. The Northeast is technically an Arctic desert, receiving less precipitation than the Sahara. No camels either. The South is wetter, about 35 inches per year, similar to Chicago. But that's still barely enough to make farming possible. Only sheep thrive at Greenland's southern tip, and the soil? Lousy. In 2022, only 0.6% of Greenland's land was arable, placing it among the least farmable countries on Earth. Eric the Red had to exaggerate paradise just to lure settlers, and it's easy to see why. Brutal cold, scarce rainfall, and nearly impossible soil combine to make life difficult for anyone who isn't genetically and culturally prepared. Greenland isn't empty because of laziness. It's empty because surviving here demands extraordinary adaptation. Greenland isn't empty because it's cold. It's empty because life here fights back every step of the way. Ice, wind, isolation, impossible soil, and oceans between every settlement make survival feel like a sport no one signed up for. With fewer than 60,000 people on a land bigger than many countries, Greenland proves that territory doesn't equal population. This island is epic, eerie, and endlessly challenging. And if you think it's empty now, wait until you see what the future holds.